There was no avoiding it today. Alluring green hats, shirts, heads and hair were everywhere, worn in honour of Ireland's patron saint. It's the 11th year Hamilton Hotel, the Northern Star, has put on a good St Patrick's Day show, complete with Irish fare, music and even a bit of Celtic swordplay.
4 stages, 9 bands. We've started today at 6:30am with the music, and it hasn't stopped, and it won't finish till 1am tonight.
No doubt it was the luck of the Irish helping this fellow stay upright and on key. And next year's celebrations could be on a grander scale, with discussions underway with council to close Beaumont Street for the day. Elsewhere in the city, festivities were a tad more raucous, with free-flowing Irish ale helping revellers to embrace the St Patrick's spirit.
Partying is St Patrick's Day. You can't come to St Patrick's Day without the will to drink alcohol. See, look, like this.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
I don't think I performed too good that one. I chewed up all the time and didn't get hardly any waves. So, if anything, it's put me in a good frame of mind for tomorrow. I'm filthy on myself.
Looking for his 4th contest win at Newcastle, Mick Fanning will have to wait another year after being eliminated in his morning heat. His presence in the Celebrity Challenge, though, turned it up on others.
It's a bit nervous, actually, that sort of thing, but I mean, it was something different.
Most eyes were on Andrew Johns, given he'll join Gidley in the night's season opener tomorrow.
I was nervous going out. I was more nervous out there than I was when I play footy. I won't say footy's easy, but it's what we know to do. But getting out there in front of people, out of your comfort zone, it's quite nerve-wracking.
They do 100 times better than any of the surfers would do if you stuck us out in the middle of marathon.
With that out of the way, it was finals time in the Women's Open event. But after a week of ideal conditions, the Southerly couldn't have timed its arrival worse. It was an all-Brazilian affair for the Midori Pro decider after the last of the Aussies were eliminated in the semi-finals. But it became more about beating the conditions than each other. Silvana Lima got the judges' nod over compatriot Jacqueline Silva, but the pair celebrated like they'd both got the prize. Sharing the odd hug, it's the pint-sized board rider who gets to keep a winner's check to rival her feisty frame.
You would think that after months of drought, the residents of Vasey would welcome any rainfall, but not today.
We love the rain at the moment because we all really are desperate for rain. But on a day like today, I mean, I guess we're a little bit disappointed that it started to rain, but look how many people are still here, so it's really great.
While nearly 15 millimetres of rain fell overnight, it didn't rain on today's parade, the annual Vasey Village Country Carnival swinging into action under threatening skies. The main street was backed up with traffic of all kinds. Umbrellas in hand, hundreds of people made their way along the stalls admiring the locally made handicrafts and sampling the vast range of locally made or grown food. Others opted for a more traditional Australian lunch, eating soup, bread and tea cooked on the campfire. But it was the Jack Russell Terrier 100-metre fox and law races that stole the show. Despite their size, no hurdle proved too big a jump, each little dog racing to the end, some not letting anything, including our camera, stop it getting to the finish line. Christy Carter, NBN News.
What goes up must come down, and after 7 days of competition, the main men's draw had come down to just 2. ASP World Tour mainstay Phil McDonald entered the final a clear favourite, given he'd won all 5 heats to qualify for the decider. He set the pace, but the young gun from the Gold Coast answered in kind. A powerful ride deep into the final racked up the points and placed him into the lead. In a dramatic finish, McDonald had one last chance to return serve as a monster set rattled through inside the last minute. Thompson held his breath, but McDonald couldn't hold the wave, and the title was heading north. The 24-year-old burly board rider rightly pleased, given his start to the qualifying series last year. The $10,000 US first prize cheque wouldn't hurt either.
Yeah, I've just started off, it was perfectly planned, and I'm just so happy, frothing.
The team's event draws competitors of all shapes and sizes, but no matter what level of ability, all deserve the rap just for turning up today. The diehards were the first wave away, and never before had they lived up to their tag, with Horseshoe Beach cloaked in the ordinary conditions. A pack of 3 met in the first transition. Nathan Stewart among the leaders before he put the foot down. Preparing for the famous Ironman triathlon in 2 weeks in Port Macquarie, Stewart blasted away on the bike.
I've got to dominate in the bike league to win races, and I know that. So as soon as we got out to swim and we were together, I was putting my hammer down to get rid of the boys.
He did just that, cruising home to a comfortable win. On the comeback trail, after more than a year out of the sport, Maitland's Melanie Sexton did it all herself in the women's. Showing why she's earmarked for bigger things, the 19-year-old chalked up her first ever win here.
In the 12 hours from 6 p.m. on Saturday, Operation Viking saw an additional 35 police hit the beat to crack down on antisocial and violent behaviour in Newcastle's CBD.
There were 11 arrests, unfortunately, for various offences ranging from assault to offensive behaviours. but happy to report there was no serious assaults.
The operation came in response to alarming figures which showed that more than 300 assaults were reported in the Newcastle area in the past year. But the operation is only part of the solution. Police today met again with the Liquor Accord to develop strategies to reduce CBD crime.
The licensees have agreed to increase the street security, and that's putting additional security officers on the street, and hopefully they'll be able to intervene in incidents before they happen.
Police are also in discussions with the Department of Transport to have more buses and trains run out of the city on weekend nights. While for now hoteliers have rejected the proposed 1 a.m. lockout, police say it will be again considered if the planned strategies don't work. Tonight, candidates for the seat of Newcastle will address a public forum on how they would reduce the city's crime problems if they're elected next week. We'll bring you the outcome of that meeting in NBN News tomorrow night. Christy Carter, NBN News. Frank Newbury was one of hundreds of Cooks Hill residents who attended 88-year-old Lily Mae Wood's funeral just over 2 weeks ago. Today, in a sad twist of fate, his neighbours united to say farewell 7 days after his murder at the grocery store he'd owned for 58 years. The Navy Association paid its tribute to the war veteran, its members laying poppies on his coffin as a sign of remembrance. Mourners struggled to cope with their emotions as a video tribute was played.
I'd like to be able to tell you what to do with your anger, but I'm having great difficulty dealing with my own.
He was robbed of his money and his life, but he can never be robbed of his reputation. That will shine bright forever.
Mr Newbury was laid to rest as a team of Newcastle and Sydney-based homicide squad detectives continue to search for clues to the crime. At his Union Street shop, floral tributes continued to overflow, messages of love and loss summing up community fears.
Now the state government has given approval for the floodgates that separate the Hunter River from Ironbark Creek to be opened, earthworks needed for the project to rehabilitate Hexham Swamp can finally commence. The first job is to build a levee at Shortland to protect that area from being inundated once salt water is returned to the swamp.
About half a metre high, and these are just earthen banks which will be built to keep the high tides off some of the private land.
Even though levees are needed, the Hunter Central Rivers Catchment Management Authority says the reintroduction of salt water from the Hunter River into Ironbark Creek will be a staged process that could take up to 3 years.
We'll be opening one floodgate at a time and then carefully monitoring what happens. So we'll be monitoring the water levels, we'll be monitoring the changes in the vegetation and the changes in the habitat.
And plenty will also be watching to see what impact the move has on the local fishery.
Back in the 1980s, young king prawns were tagged here and found as far north as Hervey Bay in Queensland. So it just shows that this fish and prawn nursery here affects the whole of the New South Wales coast.
Gary Blair, NBN News. When cars reach the end of the road at Smorgasdale Hexham, they meet their recycler. Amazingly, the coins in those vehicles do manage to survive for one more trip to the bank.
And through one of the processes that we have here with the shredding facility, all the old coins that fall out of your pockets over the years, down the back of the seat, you can never quite find where they are when you rat round there for half an hour. We actually end up getting them.
So every couple of years, a local children's charity gets a couple of hefty 150-kilogram surprises as a donation from Smorgasdale's employees. While Dolores Lord and Sylvia Donkin from the Starlight Children's Foundation had to launder their fundraising windfall before it could be deposited, this clean-up was a true labour of love.
Because all this money does go to actually provide wishes for very seriously ill children.
Having sorted coinage ranging from 1 cent to $1, Starlight this evening had $1,000 in the kitty with more to count. Gary Blair, NBN News. Much like it can be on field when he plays, Andrew John's injury also overshadowed the impact yesterday's game had on Jared Mullen. The teenager got through the match, but only just.
He really gutsed it out for us yesterday. At one stage he was having trouble with his ribs and breathing.
With Johns almost certain to miss Friday night's match against the Dragons, Mullen would have been joined in the halves by Kurt Gidley, but just how that plays out will now rest on medical reports. The latter just happy his wobbly field goal found the mark to snatch a 1-point win.
Yeah, mate, as long as they go over, I don't think it matters how they go over, as long as they get over, so just chalk another wobbly one up for me.
With that said, everyone in the Knights camp agrees that offensive frailties in the first half were a real problem.
Disappointed and disgusted at times as well.
The Bulldogs actually led 18-2 at one stage, and had this stuck late in the game, Newcastle's comeback would have been for nothing.
I think I would have jumped on the ground and started crying if he caught that.
No tears, just 2 hard-fought competition points. It's got to be a tough spot. New South Wales Netball General Manager Carolyn Campbell is about to address the Hunter Jagers squad. Armed with little more than the knowledge she's in for a challenging night. The state body today announced it will adhere to Netball Australia's directive and enter just one team in a new Trans-Tasman competition. But outside of that, detail is scarce.
We still have a very limited information, so I need to make sure that I take a lot of their questions on board. I then have the capacity to try and find answers to those.
Outside of Trans-Tasman competition games which have been promised to the region, the Jagers appear destined to play in a second-tier comp at best.
Until we get details of that, we don't know what format that will be in or what opportunities will lie there for us.
What consolation that will be to those who helped develop the Hunter Jagers, let alone fans who support them, is difficult to gauge, while players are left to ponder what future remains at the top level, with spots in the new state team to be at a premium.
I guess we have to show faith in the decision that's been taken by the national organisations that this is going to be better for netball and better for the players in the long run.
Up and about today. It was a lot different to the way Andrew Johns finished yesterday. His trip to the club doctor this morning, the first on a list of medical visits.
I still feel really off, so I'm just going to rest up and not even think about training for the next couple of days, and then see how I go.
It was a nasty tackle whichever way you look. And the reaction of trainers was enough to convince anyone it was serious. Knocked out for several minutes, Johns was later stretchered from the field and taken to hospital, where he was cleared of facial fractures and neck problems, but it's the impact on his brain that remains a concern.
I found out today I was in hospital for 4 hours. I thought I was only there for about 20 minutes, so it's pretty severe head knocks.
The Bulldogs' Sonny Bill Williams was sent off for the incident, but was quick to apologise to Johns personally.
He rang me last night and I had a good chat to him, and he said he didn't mean it. He's very remorseful.
Williams was today charged after the league's match review committee viewed the tackle, and he faces at least a 2-week suspension. We'll have his reaction to the tackle later in sport. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Four days out from polling day, and the Premier was after traction in Labor's traditional heartland. He used a visit to EDI Rail's coal train maintenance facility to press the flesh with workers and launch his policy for the Hunter. Morris Yema's big ticket item for the region is to complete the Energy Australia stadium revamp.
And today we're putting on the table $30 million and seeking a matching contribution from the Commonwealth to complete the redevelopment of the Western Grandstand.
The Stadium Trust has been waiting since 2002 for Canberra to respond to an initial request for money toward the overhaul that has already delivered the new Eastern Stand. The Premier will now write to Federal Sports Minister George Brandis asking for Canberra's $30 million.
Yes, straight away.
A prompt response could allow the Trust to bid for a major football tournament.
The Asia Cup is on in 2011. And if we can get this stadium up to scratch, we'd certainly be a contender for holding some of those events here.
But the state government's promise didn't impress Lord Mayor and independent Newcastle candidate John Tate.
Well, there's too many strings attached to take it seriously. As a matter of fact, I think the citizens of Newcastle will feel a bit insulted about this.
Also included in the Hunter plan, $10 million for Hunter Medical Research Institute's new research building at the John Hunter. There is also 222 new and 142 refurbished buses by 2014 to service the government's outer metropolitan bus reforms. Gary Blair, NBN News.
Testament to just how concerned the community is about late-night crime in Newcastle, an overflowing public audience of more than 500 at Newcastle Panthers. They spilled out of the auditorium but stayed on, eager to hear what solutions the candidates had come up with. Hosts, the Newcastle Law Society, say while the forum was useful, the tactics discussed were not new.
The raft of initiatives that were put forward as strategies were predictable, you would have to say.
Ideas for the short term included a 24-hour police presence in the city, a 1am lockout for pubs and clubs, and increasing the security responsibilities of licensees of inner-city venues. The audience was also polled and an overwhelming majority supported the initiatives. Longer-term strategies focused on preventative and educational measures, such as addressing alcohol and drug abuse and the growing availability of the methamphetamine ice.
Those who practice in the criminal justice system in Newcastle say that the courts are significantly busier, that they are significantly busier, that there's much more criminal activity translating to criminal cases before the courts.
As if holding down one of the region's most high-profile administrative positions isn't tough enough, speculation has been rife for months that Ken Conway's tenure was under increasing pressure. That and other stresses related to the nature of his job led to doctors advising he take at least 3 weeks leave.
I'd be very, very surprised if a person in Ken's position would not admit himself that the pressures are considerable.
NBN also has learned that the deal brokered between warring factions on the Knights board included the removal of Ken Conway as CEO, and it was accepted last night by the Newcastle Rugby League. It will also see the local league's representation on the Knights board reduced, but see the organisation receive strong ongoing financial support.
Hopefully we will be able to make a decision, perhaps even as early as tomorrow.
For now, the Knights will be run by 3 departmental heads, including football manager Steve Crowe, but the CEO's position could well become available full-time.
Well, obviously, if Ken's illness continues, then that would be the next ploy, yeah.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Volunteers at Blackbutt Reserve say only a mean-spirited council would throw out the animals to save money. Council bean counters have given the park's 10 staff and 90 volunteers an ultimatum: lose the 50 species of animals or charge an entry fee. It's been free since the 60s, but the support group says it would be a tragedy to lose the animals.
We do agree, though, that a charge into the exhibit area would be reasonable.
The nearby Community Greening Centre is also facing cuts. It's a hub for 700 volunteers who give their time to coast, dune, bush and creek care groups. It's also the place where the council propagates and distributes 60,000 plants a year.
There's too much good work done in the community here as far as greening Newcastle, keeping it clean and green, working on the ecology of the district. For that to happen, the council should know better.
Council refused to speak to us about the concerns today, but while volunteers sweat on their funding, the council is prepared to spend $1.4 million extending the Beresfield golf course from 11 to 16 holes and $37 million on a revamp of the art gallery. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
While most of us try to overcome a hook or a slice, golfers such as Stephen Pryor are forced to develop their own prosthesis just to play the game. Currently off a handicap of 4, Pryor shot a first round 74 today.
I started playing without it. Basically, I just found I was fluffing too many shots and things like that, so went out and made myself a prosthesis and gone from there.
Two-time champion Shane Luke finished with a 69 to stake a claim for title number 3. Amazingly, playing with his prosthetic leg, Luke's handicap was 4, but dropped the leg and the handicap drops to 2. With so many unique golfers, organisers split the prizes into 6 categories.
We have a seniors category. We also have above elbow, below elbow, below knee and above knee, and we also have multis, it's got multiple amputations.
Pushed into the event by a friend, Bali bombing victim Ben Tulipan has only been playing for 8 weeks. With a prosthetic leg controlled by computer, third-degree burns, no stomach muscles and deaf in one ear, a score of 95 is nothing short of amazing.
Hills and bunkers and that, they're a little bit tricky, but you got to have a go. If you fall over, you fall over. It's all part of the game. It's all fun.
Round 3 takes place at Horizons at Salamander Bay on Thursday before the Open wraps up on Friday. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
A late morning meeting with the club doctor and Andrew Johns was enough to convince the coach that the captain was in no shape to think about playing football this weekend.
If Andrew recovers, as he seems to have done over the past couple of days reasonably well, then there's little doubt that he'll be okay for the Canberra match, which is Monday week.
Good news on his replacement in the number 7 jumper for Friday's match against the Dragons in Jared Mullen, who's been cleared of serious injury.
Jared was pretty good this morning. I don't think there's too much doubt about him now.
In something of a surprise, though, his partner in the halves will be Daniel Abraham. With Milton Thaiday injured, Kurt Gidley will remain at fullback where he excelled at the weekend, leaving the back rower to don the unfamiliar number 6.
I don't see the job's been too hard. I just got to get clean, crisp ball to blokes like Simo and Nudo and let them worry about doing the rest.
It's been a big turnaround for the former country representative who's endured major injuries to make it back to the top level.
I feel more confident and I guess the least of me worries now is my leg. It's more about my performance week in, week out.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
And they've given us every assurance that they will, so we just hope that those supporters of the Jaegers will be looked after, as well as a few of the Jaegers girls hopefully combine with the Swifts to make up next year's team.
The Newcastle Jets thought they'd won back their man last Friday when Tim Brown, tired of the saga surrounding the relocation of the New Zealand A-League franchise. But after signing a letter of intent with the Jets late last week to return, today he wanted out once again after his hometown of Wellington, in fact, did win the bid to house the Kiwi team.
We've given him a few more weeks to sort himself out, to make sure it's not just a decision made with the heart rather than the head.
The Jets coach can sympathise with Brown's motives, given the Wellington team will be coached by the New Zealand All Whites mentor.
Look, I really hope that he does come, but my gut feeling is he won't.
It has placed Perth Glory midfielder Mark Robinson firmly on the coach's radar as a possible replacement. But this is a sight that has pleased the coach. After 2 years wrecked with a knee injury, defender Craig Deans is back in full training. So too is Stuart Mashalik. He's fighting his way back into the Ollie Roos squad for crucial games after he ended the A-League season with a shoulder injury.
I'm not happy not to be playing because it is giving someone else a chance, but at the end of the day, the main thing is that we qualify for the Olympics.
This is the contentious How to Vote card. It belongs to independent John Tate, who says it was structured by numbering the candidates in order as they appear on the card following his name.
I've tried to structure a How to Vote which is simple to follow, and that's the way the positions fell.
Mr Tate's first preference will go to Liberal Martin Babakan, Labor's Jodie McKay's number 6, while John Tate's receiving preferences from both.
Well, we tried to negotiate with the other independents. We tried to negotiate with the Greens. That didn't come to fruition.
Well, vote John Tate, you vote for Jodie McKay. It transfers through to Jodie McKay. That's very deliberate. It's the John and Jodie show.
Revved up on the campaign trail, Bryce Gaudry today said Mr Tate's How to Vote card was a deliberate ploy with Jodie McKay set to benefit.
Those people below John Tate on his ticket will be eliminated. They will transfer any of them that are backing John Tate to him, and if he goes out, his vote will then transfer to Jodie.
Meanwhile, independent candidate for Maitland Peter Blackmore today announced that his first preference will go to fellow independent Kelly Tranter. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
A not-for-profit organisation, NIB, has been a registered health fund since 1952. It began at BHP's Steelworks as Newcastle Industrial Benefits and has grown into the 6th largest health insurance provider in the country, with 320,000 members and 32 branches. Last year, it posted a pre-tax profit of almost $64 million. But like any business, it would like to see that figure dramatically increased. To do that, NIB Health Funds Limited needs to demutualise or convert itself into a profit-making public company.
As a mutual organisation, we don't have ready access to the funds that we may need to grow the business, to purchase other health funds, to purchase other businesses which may be consistent with our plans.
In the coming months, members will vote on the plan and, if it's approved, they'll receive shares in NIB when the company lists on the stock exchange later in the year.
All the details about how those shares are allocated, on what basis, length of membership will be one of the main factors. They will be communicated to our members in about June, and they'll be asked to vote on the scheme of arrangement in early July.
Jessica Phillis, NBN News.
When Ivan Welsh was elected as the independent state member for Swansea in 1988, George Keegan won Newcastle also as an independent, as did Dawn Fraser in the seat of Balmain. The Friends were together again today at Ivan's funeral at Newcastle's Christchurch Cathedral.
Well, Ivan was in my book, was the ultimate friendly man. He talked to everybody. He had a good word for everybody. He had a sense of humour. He had a great sense of responsibility.
After serving as a soldier in Vietnam and Malaya, Mr Welsh served as the Mayor of Lake Macquarie and was passionate about representing his community as an independent.
But I'm going to tell you this, if we vote for these same parties and send them back with the same policies, times now will be thought of as the good times when our kids reach the future.
Up until his last days, he was closely watching the current election.
Well, I saw him in hospital 2 weeks ago and we talked about it. And he agreed with me, it's a dog's breakfast.
Current and former mayors, lord mayors and politicians were among the mourners who filled the cathedral today. The 67-year-old will be remembered for his passion for politics, family, food and life. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
"2006 was widely regarded as one of the best in Newcastle League history, but competition insiders believe the best is yet to come.
Most clubs have built up well. Lakes, Nelson Bay, the 2 grand final sides from last year, look very, very strong. West with a new coach in Kurt Hancock. Cessnock, a new coach in Peter Walsh.
Second last in 2006, the Wyong Roos have now made a full commitment to the Newcastle comp, bringing with it the club's 6 sides. That depth has the Roos being mentioned as favourites, but former NRL player and new Wyong captain coach Paul Stringer isn't brimming with confidence.
We've had a few trial games, we've gone all right in some and not so good in the others, so we'll find out on Sunday when the 2 points are up for grabs.
Despite losing some big names, the all-conquering Newcastle representative side is expected to dominate when it returns to the park on May 12. Off the field, the peace deal between the Newcastle Knights board and the local league has been finalised, with an announcement to be made tomorrow morning. The 10 local clubs set to benefit financially from the agreement.
We're just looking forward to getting football kicked and getting underway and concentrating wholly and solely on the Newcastle League now.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. He got a taste of first grade during the trial in Darwin, but Corey Patterson admits this weekend is a whole new ballgame.
I didn't think it would come this quick, but it has now, so I've just got to concentrate on my job and do the best I can for the team.
Patterson was a huge part of the Knights Jersey Flegg Grand Final side last year, and while he's new to red and blue supporters, he already has a passionate fan club. Encouraged to move across from Perth to further his career, Corey spent a year with Jared Mullen's family before his own family followed. The Pattersons never miss a game.
People would say, you're mad going to Darwin to watch a game of footy, but a lot of people didn't realise we used to travel from Western Australia to New South Wales to watch him play footy.
At age 19, Patterson's size and speed has drawn comparisons to former Newcastle greats.
I don't read into too much of that. I'm my own person, and if I can be half as good as those blokes, I'll be happy.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
What better way to celebrate Australia's cultural diversity than by showcasing Australia's Indigenous roots? Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander dances were performed at the University of Newcastle in recognition of Harmony Day. There were also plenty of international culinary delights, flags and messages of peace.
So today you enjoy some food and say, hey, this food is really great, that dance is really great, where is this from? And you learn something about that culture.
Meanwhile, 260 keen kids from Plattsburgh Public School took part in Crick Kids, Australia's biggest cricket game. The all-inclusive match promoted Harmony Day values like teamwork, fairness and respect. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Family, friends and fellow Defence Force personnel spilled from St Mary's Church at Toukley, just a few suburbs from Chain Valley Bay, where Special Air Services Trooper Joshua Porter spent most of his childhood. Inside, mourners remembered a soldier whose life was cut tragically short when a Black Hawk helicopter crashed into the sea last November. During a military career which spanned 6.5 years, Trooper Porter served in East Timor, the Solomon Islands and Afghanistan. He had been training for the possible evacuation of Australian nationals from Fiji when he died. Loved ones today recalled the 28-year-old's quick wit, love of sport and a beer, and his adoration for wife Karina. At the conclusion of the service, the SAS Regiment Honour Guard fired 3 volleys. And the bugler played the last post in tribute. Comrades carried his coffin out of the church before the hearse was escorted up the street. It was followed by family and widow Karina Porter, who is expecting the couple's first child in a matter of weeks. The Defence Force described Trooper Porter as an excellent, dedicated soldier, one who will be dearly missed. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
Police want to speak to a man who fits this image. He was seen by 2 witnesses leaving Frank's Ham and Beef store sometime between 3:30 and 4:30 on the afternoon Frank Newbury was murdered.
He's just a person who witnesses have seen around the area, and we wish to interview him to see whether he may have seen or heard anything around that time.
The man is aged between 30 and 40, of thin to medium build, has dark brown hair and is of Caucasian appearance. While police say they're still investigating robbery as a motive for the violent crime, they're unable to determine if anything was stolen from the store.
I'll look at maybe some weeks, but certainly that is an avenue we're looking at.
Detectives also remain guarded over the cause of Mr Newbury's death.
We're still waiting for the final results from the post-mortem.
Police are also looking for another man described as being in his 30s or 40s, of heavy build with shoulder-length blonde curly hair, who was seen in the store at around 4:10 p.m. Anyone who knows either man is asked to contact police. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Mandy Deer has many fond memories of the Cooks Hill community and this street where she lived from the age of 12. This photograph captures happier times with her beloved mother Roz, taken in this very same spot outside their home.
Everyone would say hello to everyone. It was just that big community spirit once again. And me and Mum just shared so many memories in the house, you know, just dancing in the lounge room and things like that. And that's what I try and hold on to, not the darkness of what's happened.
It's difficult returning to the Lehman Street home. It was here that Mandy discovered her mother's body 2 years ago, and Rosalind Ray's murder is still unsolved. But what makes it even harder now are the recent murders, including that of her local grocer.
When I heard about Frank, because I was closer to him, I just got angry. Angry, enough's enough. There's got to be a stop to this.
That's compelled her to call for more police in an attempt to return Newcastle to the safe city she once knew as a child.
Some of the things we could do, especially as a community, is reenact a neighbourhood watch program for one. Not be afraid to come forward with information to the police. It's the only way we're going to take these people off our streets.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
There's not much that Kay Young and her 89-year-old mother Phyllis Meadows don't know about menswear. They've measured up and clothed thousands of people since Phyllis's late husband Arthur opened the business in 1953.
I always think that it's the atmosphere in a business. When you walk into a shop, if everyone's happy, that atmosphere rubs off to the customer.
Staff member Kathy Willits has clocked up 34 years at the store, Rosalind Layton 21 years.
It's an end of an era. It's very sad, actually, when it's been such a big part of your life for a long time.
Kay and her mother have decided to retire to enjoy more of life. And Kay says she'll miss her customers, some of whom make her feel like a particular TV character.
Sometimes I do, yes. I'm getting close to Mrs. Slocum's age.
It hasn't all been fun. 27 robberies in 54 years have cost both financial and emotional pain. And next month's closing day will no doubt bring a few more tears, but no regrets.
I wouldn't change a thing.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Prostate cancer treatment is planned using this machine to conduct CT or computerised tomography scans to locate the gland ahead of radiotherapy. The problem with using CT scans is the prostate almost blends in with surrounding body tissue.
So therefore we have to treat a larger region to ensure that we're always hitting the prostate. However, on an MRI scan, the borders really shine out.
Medical physicists at the Mater Hospital are now trying to develop the technology to allow MRI or magnetic resonance imaging scans to be used during the planning stage of treatment instead of CT scans. Dr. Peter Greer says through using MRI scans, radiation therapists will be able to more accurately target the gland and ultimately reduce side effects.
If we have less side effects, we can actually give more radiation to the prostate, to the tumour itself, and that should give a better outcome.
Today, the Cancer Council New South Wales handed over $301,000 to support the project, which will be carried out over the next 3 years and involve 30 patients. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
"6 weeks ago, Newcastle was a rugby league town divided. Now it seems the Newcastle Rugby League Board and the Knights are back on the same page.
It's a win-win situation.
Knights members will vote whether to reduce the number of Newcastle Rugby League directors from 4 to 2 on April 26 at the club's annual general meeting. If accepted, the current Knights board will remain in place until the local league's AGM in November, where 2 directors will be nominated. In April 2008, Knights members will elect 7 directors to the 9-person board, a decision that was obviously tough to make.
That representation, even though it may be diminished, will certainly not take away the fact that we, as we said, rely on the Newcastle Rugby League for so many things.
To compensate, the Knights will make an annual payment of $150,000 to fund the game's development in the region. An additional $6,000 payment will go to junior clubs that produce Knights first graders in the future, while a $10,000 payment will be offered to clubs that joined the local competition beyond 2007. Former clubs such as Maitland also eligible for the payday. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. What started as a 4-team tournament in New Zealand last year now has the potential to become a second-tier national competition. Originally featuring New South Wales and Queensland country, a representative Jim Beam Cup side and a New Zealand residents side, the Quad Series will now include most areas of Australia. The semis and finals also set to be broadcast on NBN.
Games will be played in Tamworth, Gunnedah and Narrabri over a 2-week period, and the two teams with the highest aggregate will play off in the final.
To football, and Newcastle Jets players Nicky Carl and Jade North are unlikely to start for the Socceroos this Saturday against China. But after World Cup stars Vince Grella and Jason Kalina were ruled out through injury, coach Graham Arnold is hoping to give both Jets a chance to impress coming off the bench. Having recently transferred to a Chinese club, former Newcastle United player Ryan Griffiths has plenty of advice for his teammates.
They should expect it to be more physical than what they probably expect. The Chinese are very technical, very fast, but if we can step on the ball and control them, then we shouldn't have any problems.
And a bad day for our locals at the Hot Tuna Pro on the Central Coast, with Michael Spencer and Paul Parks both eliminated in round 5. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
The Labor Party is clearly worried about losing the seat of Newcastle tomorrow, sending ALP leader Kevin Rudd to the city, while Premier Yemma dropped by twice this week. For those staunch ALP members who have turned their back on the party over the controversial pre-selection of Jodie McKay, today's Labor love-in would have had them seeing red. Kevin Rudd freely admitted he was in town to bolster Jodie McKay's campaign and was not ashamed to say he doesn't know much about the process by which she was selected.
There's a lot of things that I don't know all the local details on, and I'm not here to talk about local internal matters. What I am here to talk about is why I think Jodie McKay is a first-class candidate for Newcastle for the future.
He was also in town to talk up his new national high-speed broadband network based on optical fibre and met with local e-company Cybus.
The government's consideration of existing proposals go to only the 5 capital cities.
Cybus says current broadband speeds outside the CBD are limited and would welcome faster broadband to improve efficiency.
We move a lot of data between Melbourne and Newcastle on a regular basis. The availability of a high-speed broadband network is critical to us.
Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
Port Stephens is lucky enough to have one of the best equipped sea rescue boats on the east coast, thanks not to the state government but to fundraising and the generosity of a private benefactor.
The Coastal Patrol gets $350,000 to be shared between 26 bases, so it doesn't go very far at all.
Pretty drastic. If we thought at Christmas time we might have had to stop operations where things got that low.
Since the state government closed its coastal radio stations in 2005, volunteer groups are now the only ones offering local weather reports and keeping tabs on offshore boaties. They also carry out most of the rescues due to limited police resources. And frustratingly, the groups believe money from boating licences is being spent elsewhere.
Waterways records a surplus every year and pays a dividend to the government, and they then put that in consolidated revenue and spend it on something else. Seems a bit rude from the boating public's point of view.
The groups know they'll need to amalgamate in the future to survive, but some say the biggest barrier to that in the short term is deciding who the Admiral will be. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Despite sweltering temperatures, Tokau College's EA Hunt Hall was filled to capacity. 260 graduating students, along with their friends, relatives and teachers, all clamoured for seat space to watch the school's largest graduation ceremony. At the top of the 2006 class was 22-year-old Jessica Plant from Old Bar. The former Jillaroo is counting on her agricultural ducks honours to help her break into horse dentistry.
People will see that and think, oh well, you know, she's serious about what she's doing, and yeah, she's dedicated and wants to be right up there.
She shared the top spot with aspiring dairy farmer Stephanie Tarlington from Bega. Both girls say attending the college has helped their careers.
We're exposed to a lot of different industries and a lot of different high-profile people that we could get in contact with and meet, and it was definitely a good chance to build networks.
Many of today's graduates were external or distant students, with a fair share of city slickers among them, including a large contingent of Sydney-based Chinese and Arabic-speaking vegetable farmers. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
A few things. I'm going to wait a couple of weeks out, and if my form's good enough, then I'll put my hand up for the selection. Up until then, it's a guessing game. I haven't played hardly any football. I haven't trained too much in the last 2 months, so there's a lot of ifs and buts in there. I think everyone knows State of Origin's the ultimate football, so if I do decide to go, then the club wouldn't stand in my way. There's definitely a positive.
As for the game tonight, Johns predicts his replacement in the number 7, Jared Mullen, will steer Newcastle to victory.
A young 5'8" who's playing halfback tonight, Jared Mullen, really took control, and hopefully he can do that tonight. A positive for us, Matt Cooper, the representative centre for St George, is out, so that'll definitely help the Knights tonight.
Nathan Campbell has fallen victim to his own hard work. Set to represent Australia in the elite six-man team at Mooloolaba, stress fractures in his right leg have ruled him out of competition and training for at least 6 weeks.
Yeah, Mooloolaba was a really important race for me, so I really pushed the training and pushed the mileage, and I wanted to have, give it my best shot, but probably just pushed it a little bit too hard and body broke down.
He's now racing the clock to be ready for the next World Cup event in Portugal, given he needs to accrue points to maintain his world ranking.
Bone's very hard to heal, so it's really, I'm going to really have to push it. I'm not sure if it's going to be right in time.
No such dramas for Maitland's Brendan Sexton, who'll be racing on Sunday after rounding out final preparations on the Gold Coast, where he's been training with Commonwealth Games gold medalist Brad Carlefeld. Back to rugby league, and locally, it's the opening round of the Newcastle competition this weekend. There's 2 games tomorrow, however it's the clash of last year's grand finalists that highlights Sunday's action at Belmont, with Lakes hosting Nelson Bay. And Newcastle Rugby Union has made a raft of positional changes for its match against Central West tomorrow at Orange. Winless from 2 games, Newcastle faces a tough task to reach the final. Andrew Johns doesn't remember much about the last time they met, but he was certainly happy about this encounter. Sonny Bill Williams was suspended for 2 weeks for the high tackle, and there's growing concern Johns may miss as many due to the severity of his concussion. Meanwhile, they face the Dragons tonight, who are off to their best start in recent seasons with a win in round 1.
It's the first time actually since I coached Flegg that actually have been involved with the side that won the first game, so it was different, but it was enjoyable.
It's how his rookie players back up this weekend after Mo shone on debut against the Titans. Brown has got no doubt they'll be better for the run, but he's sure the Knights have got plans for them as well.
Last week was good enough for last week, but as is the case with young kids, like Brian Smith now has got to have a much better look at them than what John Carter would have got to have a look at them. So they'll get challenged a lot more this week.
Newcastle report no late changes to their lineup despite some concerns for 5'8" Jared Muller.
Anyone who thought getting in early would mean beating the voting crowds was wrong, with morning queues stretching out of polling booths and onto the street, and ballot boxes overflowing by 10 a.m. Candidates grappled for votes right until the end. And the Labor rift and fierce competition between candidates was only too evident. There was some confusion in the Port Stephens electorate, with many Warrabrook voters unaware of the boundary change from Newcastle.
It is a bit strange, but I guess with all this voting, stranger things have happened.
So did you realise you were voting in the Port Stephens electorate?
No, I had no idea.
As the day wore on, queues dropped off and candidates began casting votes, some flaunting their selections.
Oh, one for Jodie.
I voted number 1, Bryce Gaudry.
While others were more elusive.
That's a bit of a secret. That's one of the wonderful things about a democratic system. We don't have to tell anyone.
I've actually voted independent, and I hope a lot of other people have as well.
And does that mean that you voted for yourself?
I'm the only one on the ticket.
But all seemed confident of success.
Well, the feedback has been positive right throughout this campaign, so I'm hoping to do well.
I've given it my best shot, and we'll just see what happens later tonight.
Look, I think it's going to be very close, but I'm very confident that we're in a winning position.
But the truth is, after tonight, most candidates' election dreams will end here. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Oh yeah, knocked me clean out. So I was seeing stars and I was dizzy on my feet for a little while, but yeah, it was alright.
There's a joke that outrigger canoe racing is a sport that you retire into, but there's hardly anything relaxing about a 35-kilometre paddle at pace, and much of it on the open ocean. Dedication and motivation are two words that come to mind, but once the open men's field went from the relative calm of Shoal Bay out into the open water, the real test of mental and physical fitness was on. Relief for the 6-man crews coming in the shape of 3 rowers who literally swap seats around every 20 minutes.
Early on it's not so bad, but towards the end of the event, when you've been in the boat for 2.5 hours, it is quite difficult to leverage yourself up.
And that's not the only thing you have to worry about in this gruelling endurance sport.
Fuels are very important, food, hydration. Today's going to be critical to be eating because you're going over an hour's worth of activity, but also drinking, that's also very important.
Ziggy and his Northern Beaches teammates, though, will be drinking to success tonight after easily winning the men's race. The win and race itself will provide the perfect lead-up to the Australian Championships and the $100,000 Hamilton Cup. But after today's effort, a rest for everyone is definitely on the cards.